Sage Wanderer here, coming at you from inside the shotgun shack in the Texas Outback. Man, it is just too hot to make a video outdoors today, so we brought it inside for today. Yeah, I want to talk about the Hunger Games. Was it just a motion picture or the future of America? Dun, dun, dun. So, if you haven't seen the movies, essentially the timeline on that suggests that there was some sort of conflict between suburban and rural areas and the major metropolises, and that the country folk lost the war, and now they've been subjugated. They're less than citizens. They're kind of like POWs. They're slaves to the cities, creating the food and you know, producing all of the agricultural work for free, and they don't get to share in it or own their own property, or even they're not even allowed to really eat from their own products. You know, so that's kind of a scary future, and a lot of people look around that because the game is what is so intriguing, and how the game is played. But to me, you know, this you know, very strange, introverted, flamboyant culture that they painted that was going on in the urban areas, and how they viewed the country folk as non-citizens and less than human, and dominated them in such a dark way. You know, I mean, are they trying to tell us something? Are they trying to tell us country folk something in these movies, right? So, you know, as I look at that, and I think about also the John Titor timeline, just to bring you up to speed on that. John Titor was a guy that called into some late night talk shows back in the 80s and 90s, talking about how there was going to be a civil war in America between the country folk and the city folk. And I'll be doggoned if it doesn't look like we might be on this John Titor timeline. In Titor's timeline, we ended up winning the war, the country people did, but only because Russia nuked all the cities. Dun, dun, dun. Now, in Hunger Games, that didn't happen yet. It didn't happen. The other thing happened. You know, the cities wiped out all the country folk and subjugated them. So, it got me thinking about our country and how amazing our founding fathers were, and how they thought of everything. And if we just had a straight democracy, then heavily populated areas where people were like-minded, or people who, you know, the mob mentality would outweigh the individual. Let me repeat that. In a democracy, the mob rules and the individual has no rights or autonomy. That he's subject or subjugated to the mob rule. And so we put stops and balances, checks and balances in place in America. Our founding fathers did, to prevent this sort of thing from happening. For instance, there's something you got to keep in mind. This is not a democracy. This is not a one man gets, you know, one man or one person, one vote world, okay? We're a republic. It's why I end most of my videos by saying, God save our republic. Because I want to keep reminding people that this, of God obviously, but also that this is a republic, not a democracy. We're a republic. That means we're a representational government. And sometimes I think I ought to just quit everything I'm doing on this channel and just teach you know, civics on here and how our government works. Because our founding fathers were really way smarter than us. And they were certainly way smarter than an upstart young freshman congressman from New York who thinks she knows everything. AOC. She's been calling lately for the abolishment of not just ICE, but of also our Electoral College. And she calls it racist because she says it gives white people more votes than the urban, you know, people of color. Let me tell you something. There's lots of people of color out here working on these farms in these sparsely populated states. It ain't just white people, for one. Second, we do actually have more power than the people in the urban areas do when it comes to our vote. That smaller, more sparsely populated states have a statistical numerical edge of power per vote. It's more powerful to live in the country than it is to live in the urban areas, and not by accident. There's a lot of reasons for that. One is, and this is, harking back to the Titor timeline again. In that timeline, when the conflict erupted, the country folk decided to stop feeding the city people because food isn't grown in the city. It's grown out in the country and on the land. America isn't just a group of people. America is a place, okay? It is land. The land itself gets a vote. You see, we're not one country, right? We are a united group of states. So the Electoral College doesn't give me more power because I live in a rural state, right, that has less people, which I don't. Texas doesn't really fall into that because we have a lot of urban areas too. We're kind of balanced. But let's say I lived in Wyoming, or let's say I lived in Montana. So Montana, in the Senate, I'm teaching some civics here, so pay close attention. Montana in the Senate, and Texas and New York and California in the Senate are all equal. Everybody gets 2 senators. Why is that? Because the Senate was seen as a place where the states, right, get to weigh in against each other, compete with one another, and work it out in the details, because we are a united group of states. So the Senate is the lawmaking for each of the states. That's why each state is equal. We don't have little stars on the flag and big stars on the flag. We have equal stars on the flag. Every state is equal. Every state gets 2 senators. Follow? Okay. That's why they call the House of Representatives the representational of the people, or the people's house, because that is broken down by population. That you get the number of congressmen you get to go to the Congress directly reflects the direct population of your state. Okay? So this is engineered to give the states equal power, right? But at the same time respect the overall opinion of the conglomerate as well, the combined ideas of the country as a whole. Okay? Now, there's been a lot of argument about this, the popular vote versus the Electoral College vote. Okay? There is no such thing as a popular vote. There is no popular vote. The only reason they calculate a popular vote is because they're trying to push out the idea of a republic and push us towards a more of a democratic, socialist kind of thing, and not a republic, right? And there's a lot of talk about how the country people, or the people that live in the rural areas, get on the short end of the stick when heavily populated states like California and New York rule things. When major metropolises, what I'm starting to call now city-states, these sanctuary cities like New York, Chicago, LA, when those places are allowed to rule over the entire country, country people do get the short end of the stick. For one thing, people who live in these major cities do not understand country people. They will never understand country people, and there's no sense in trying to get them to understand country people. To them, a rifle in the truck is scary. To country people, the rifle in the truck is a necessity. I might be coming home from town with a bunch of groceries in my car just to find 10 or 15 coyotes trying to eat one of my young calves in front of my children. And I have to stop that. And a firearm is the tool I use to stop it. Okay? When you call the police out here where I live, you can expect 30 to 45 minutes before they could possibly show up. Even if they got in their car the minute you got the phone call, because you're a good 30 minutes from town. So it's usually 45 minutes to an hour for a police response out here. A lot can happen in that. Tons. Wars can happen in that amount of time. You have to be prepared to protect yourself when you live in such rural environments, okay? They will never understand this, and I'm tired of trying to get them to understand it, right? But the Founding Fathers understood this. They understood that states should have their own rights, that people in rural areas who care for the land should be honored, protected, right? Given an equal seat at the table for their contribution, all right? You people in the city can't survive without us. If you got nuked, life would go on. We probably wouldn't have our new phones and toys, and we lose internet access, but honestly, we're going to do fine But if this land out here stops producing food, you people in the city will be eating each other in about 6 weeks. If that, if not sooner. You know? Some people say we're 72 hours away from total mayhem in these cities if the food stops coming in. So, the Founding Fathers were super intelligent. They're way smarter than 26-year-old waitresses. AOC. Way smarter than freshman congressmen. Way smarter than probably most of us nowadays. There's been a dumbing down in society. You should go and look up George Washington's writings and see his calligraphy handwriting that he wrote with on a daily basis. Everyone had such beautiful handwriting. You got to see some of the, I'm as guilty as the rest of us, you know? Listen, AOC, the Electoral College was put in place for the purpose of making our country balanced amongst the states. We're not a democracy, we're a republic. You're not going to change that even if you don't like it. Okay, you can't change it. Well, because it takes 2/3 of the votes and everybody's got 2 senators. You know, you're not going to bully places like Wyoming and Montana and Idaho into this new process that you're trying to push. Because it gives the cities all the powers and it gives the country people no power at all. And that's just going to lead to conflict. That's just going to lead to, well, the Titor timeline. And if you win, you get to treat us like the Hunger Games. And if it goes down like Titors said, the cities get nuked. I don't like any of that. Can't we work this out? What's wrong with the system we have right now? Exactly. What's exactly wrong with it? All that's wrong with it is you Democrats keep losing. You keep losing by that much. Because your politics are not going to sell in Montana. Your ideas are not going to sell in Idaho. Your ideas are not going to sell out here in the Texas outback. God save our republic, and let's hope we all stay out of the Hunger Games. And if we got to have a timeline, I'm leaning towards Titors, but can't we all just get along? God help us all.